how we assess where we are and what's good for us has been a particularly challenging and imperative skill during COVID. No matter what our circumstances, we both become more aware and more intimidated by how we learn to cope with stressors. For many of us, in fact, societally, alcohol is a go-to. And for better or for worse, in some ways it's tailor-made. And the idea of something which makes it better, and many people have talked about how it works chemically, frankly, as a number. It works in a way that's quite seductive, where it initially gives us that sense of numbing and a kind of euphoria. And then neurochemically, what we know is that it then, as you were suggesting, takes us down. And frequently, as we're going down, we take another drink and up we go. And many people would refer to this idea of taking a substance in order to make us feel better that inevitably makes us feel worse as maladaptive. But I find that when we pathologize our coping tools, we don't get better. So to what you're describing, how do we know when we're the person who's either consuming substances, or when we're the person who is connected to someone who we see using substances as a way of coping, or just seems to be using them more than they would typically? Speaking to alcohol in particular, there are a wide range of assessment tools that we can use, but one of the things that I have found to be most beneficial, particularly if you want to bring about change going forward, is to do kind of a personal cost-benefit analysis. Like any other relationship, who are you in this relationship? Who are you in this relationship with alcohol? Do you like who you are in this relationship? So typically when you would think about something like dependence, people would think dependence is in many ways marked by a person doing something using a substance and doing so at the consequence of many negative circumstances and yet still continuing to do it. It's a little bit like we scratch an itch, even though when we scratch it, it makes it worse. So the challenge comes is, how do I take a breath, observe first, consider who I am and kind of how I want to show up in the world, show up for other people, show up for my passions, show up for my community, show up for myself. And have I observed that I'm not doing that quite the way that I'd like to? What we find helps facilitate change isn't doing something because we know we should or shouldn't, not externally, but internally. What are my values, kind of based on like an ACT model? And am I able to live and communicate, engage, show up in the world in a way that is congruent with those values? If I'm using a substance, if I'm having that extra glass, 2 glasses, maybe 3 glasses a night, believing that I've earned it after the end of a white-knuckled kind of day, which, by the way, is very societally supported. The number of t-shirts that say, you know, don't trust me, trust the wine kind of stuff, show us that this is a very difficult thing to try and navigate of who I am. But imagine that you're in a situation where you have this kind of awareness over here. And what I ask you to do is to bring it to the forward front and consider it as, first of all, reasonable. It makes sense. If it wasn't doing something, you wouldn't be doing it. Look at what need is being met by that. Consider the consequences, cost-benefit analysis. And then what we know works best is to connect with yourself first, and secondarily to connect with other people who can help you by either empathically understanding what your needs are and struggles are, but also to help bring you to a place where numbing becomes another form instead of positive engagement.